Aloha, this is Reg Baker in Business in Hawaii. We are broadcasting live from the ThinkTech studios in Pioneer Plaza in beautiful downtown Honolulu. We can be watched on livestream.com, and we broadcast on YouTube and on Olelo occasionally. This is a show about positive stories in Hawaii. And we've heard all the negativity, but there are successful companies that have done well, and we're going to talk about their stories and how they've achieved success. And today I have Leroy Jenkins, who is the president and CEO of Production Partners Unlimited, and we're going to talk about the film industry in Hawaii. Welcome, Leroy.
Thank you, Reg.
You've been in the business for a while. You've been in Hawaii for a while too, haven't you?
Well, I'm from Hawaii. I was not born here, but I've been in film now for 35 years. Before that, I was in music. But to take you back, to make hopefully a long story a little bit shorter, my family came here in the late 40s. I was a year old and grew up through the public school system in Hawaii. And having 7 brothers and sisters, probably from an early age, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Having 7 brothers and sisters, we didn't really have financial means where the kids could have everything they want. So I took on every odd job that I could, starting from a very young age, whether it was pumping gas, whether it was cooking Kentucky Fried Chicken, whether it was delivering newspapers, or even picking pineapple in the fields on the island of Lanai during the mid-60s. But finally, I graduated from Kalani High School in 1966. So I guess I gave my age away.
So now everybody's doing the math right now.
Everybody's figuring out how old I am.
But one point, growing up in a big family certainly motivates you to go out and become a little bit independent because there's not a lot to go around and you have to go out and do that yourself.
I think that's really where it all began for me, is that I wanted to experience any odd job. I never turned down anything that was offered, and if I didn't have something to do after school, I went and looked for it. But it gave me that extra little spending money. Maybe I could save it and buy a surfboard or whatever at that time. But finally, when I did graduate, right, I went to the University of Hawaii for a short time. But while I was up at the University of Hawaii, I still had this motivation that I wanted to be creative on my own. To be honest with you, I heard a radio ad for being a broadcaster.
Oh.
So I saved my money working part-time while still attending the UH at a gas station, pumping gas right there at the foot of Diamond Head. And then I finally went off to San Francisco, got my 3rd degree license, my radio license, came back here thinking the world was just going to open up to me.
Why San Francisco?
That's where the school was.
I see.
Right, and actually the instructor that I had, the school was owned by a guy named John Cameron Swayze, if you remember him. He used to do all the Timex commercials. But anyway, after I got that, I thought things would be easy, and so I wanted to come back home because I'm from Hawaii. I wanted to come back here and be like Lucky Luck and some of these other radio people that were doing well. Reality set in, couldn't find a job. Knocked on every door. Didn't happen. Finally, I knocked on a door of a small station in Waikiki called KNDI. They needed somebody just to change the tapes. It was a religious format.
Oh, KNDI, but that's candy.
Yeah, but back then it was owned by a guy named Jim Omby. Small little studio, smaller than where we are. All he wanted me to do was change the tapes every 15 or 30 minutes, right? All I got to do on the air was to give the station ID and close that station down at 10 p.m. Well, I sat there while these tapes were being played and knew that I wasn't going to be there the rest of my life. I had to figure out what to do. I got my license. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to stay in Hawaii. Oh my gosh, what do you do? Well, I went to the owner and I said, I want to produce my own music show. So I started listening to everybody, and K-Point was the #1 station at that time, okay? I convinced him to let me do 4 hours at night, as long as I could find an advertiser, a jazz show. I had the only jazz show in Hawaii.
And this was back in the 60s?
67, 68, somewhere right in there. He goes, okay, you leave the station on instead of shutting it down, and you can do a jazz show. I knew nothing about jazz, but it was my show. It was my creation. So I knew that I could create things and make them happen if you've got the passion. I got quite a following. Totally, most of it was military, but man, the calls were coming in. I got to go out to the record distributors, get those records, put them on there, and learned a lot about jazz.
How old were you at that time? You've already disclosed your age, so you don't have to worry about it, but
18, 19.
18, 19 years old,
Yeah.
and you had that entrepreneurial spirit.
Absolutely, and it came from the odd jobs, right? And people taking interest in me in those jobs. I had bosses yelling at me because I wasn't doing things right, but I learned one thing: if you give 110%, you will be recognized. And I had some people that really paid attention to me. They helped me along the way because I didn't really have any money, to tell you the truth, right, to speak up. So one day, I got noticed doing that jazz show. K-Point called me. Now,
Wow.
KNDI was down here in the ratings, if I could put it. So I went, wow. And I think this was early 69. It's a long time ago, but early 69, and they asked me to come over. And I went over and they gave me a job.
Wow.
So I went
That
from...
was a big jump.
Big jump. But K-Point FM was new. There was a new bunch of guys. And basically K-Point FM, if I remember correctly, Uncle Tom, we became very popular and maybe #1 in a short period of time. But that station gave me my next platform. I started meeting people. I was meeting the different entertainment that was coming in, because back then there was no MTV, right? When they came to do a concert, they came to a radio station and needed to be interviewed.
That's how they promoted it.
That's how they promoted it, right? So I got to interview a lot of different groups that came in. And Tom, who was the GM at that time at K-Poi, Tom Moffett.
Tom Moffett, right.
Tom Moffett. And he was the boss, but he was doing big shows. Back then, I think it was called HIC instead of Blaisdell, but he was doing the big shows. Well, I got very interested in maybe doing the same thing. But I didn't really have the connections or anything. I'm just a little disc jockey there at K-Poi. Met a friend, took on a partner named John Selby, and we put our dimes together, and we started doing smaller venues or shows at a place called the Civic Auditorium.
Wow.
And the Civic is where they had roller derby and wrestling. So it wasn't fancy.
And it was a little dingy too, if I remember.
It wasn't fancy, but we were learning the business, and I could do radio, and I could promote the show, and we were doing all the early Steve Miller, Grateful Dead, and even the first Led Zeppelin show on their first tour in Hawaii.
Very good.
So
at what point
go
did you
ahead.
start giving Uncle Tom a race for his?
We never did. I couldn't catch Tom. And we're still very, very good friends, and I'm proud to say that. I look up to him and have a tremendous amount of respect for Tom. And, but just watching him and trying to simulate or emulate, I learned a lot. And being there at K-Poi, I made a lot of connections and relationships. And if you're an entrepreneur, this is how you get going. I never knew that I was going to be in film production later on in my life and actually stay there. Okay, I was still young. I was trying different things out, and so that was a big platform for me to jump from. And so John and I, my partner, we decided, I left K-Poi. And he goes, well, why don't we go to LA and try to become bigger and better? So off we went, right? And we started doing concerts in different states, right? Different venues, and I did leave Hawaii, but I was not happy. I came back. Now, I came back and what am I going to do? John stayed there. I came back. Well, entrepreneurs come up with new ideas. So I met another friend of mine who became a very close friend and still is to this day, named Tony. And he was opening a store called Jean's Fate. If everybody remembers the old Aloha Motors, directly across the street, and it was the first young person's
And they
store.
have a big building there now, right?
Well, it's a building that's kind of round on one end. I think there's a Yakuniko house there right now. And it's across the street from the convention center. But I met with Tony and I said, Tony, okay. And we had the master lease on the building. Why don't we open another business next to Jean's Fate? Sidewalk Cafe. Next to it, the acoustic workshop. We took, this is me and him, once again putting our pennies together, right? Left LA, came back to Hawaii, was not at Cape Boy anymore. Entrepreneurs sometimes go through a number of businesses, some succeed, but you pick yourself back up and you learn from those things.
Well, some of those challenges or false starts, or call it what you want. I
Yes.
mean, they're all learning experiences.
But I think the biggest point for being an entrepreneur is whatever you begin, sell, or move on to is keeping your relationships and your word your bond. Okay, and those are really important things for me that I've always lived by, and I've done my best at that. But, you know, we opened a place called the Acoustic Workshop. We built our own sound room with a 16-inch wall. We put it together ourselves, me and this guy, Tony, taking the sheetrock and making sure the seams, and then we started carrying Bose, Sony, Marantz, Harman Kardon. I started selling power amps to the different sound guys in town. It was a different world.
But during all of this, you were making connections, you were making contacts.
That's what really an entrepreneur does, is establish relationships and goes on with business. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I did, right? And that brought me up to about 1980. And I was fine. Things were pretty good, you know. Had worked at Cape Boy, still got to go to the shows, part of a clothing store, an audio shop, a little cafe, had a little bit of everything, a lot of things in the fire. Then I met somebody. I met a young lady that was here. She was a campaign model from Japan. And my life took the next turn.
Wow.
I'd never been to Japan. She'd been in the business, right, as a campaign. She'd done very, very well.
So she changed your life.
She totally changed everything, but she got me interested in a different culture. Okay, right now, but I'd never been to Japan. I'd never been outside the US really too much. And so it was timing. And to be honest with you, she had a wonderful career, and it was a good time for her, and we wanted to settle down and get married. So she had a few obligations. I was still traveling a little bit. And so we basically said, okay, we're going to give up everything we're doing and we're going to start something. Really wasn't clear on what together, so that we could, she wanted to live in Hawaii, but that we could be together and raise a family.
Very good.
And it was a coincidence that I got into the film business, even though she'd been in it in front of the camera, not behind it.
She had some history there, but
Yes.
let's pause for a minute.
Go ahead.
We're going to take a very short break. We'll be back in about 60 seconds or so. This is Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker, and I'm here talking with Leroy Jenkins of Production Partners. We'll be.
Aloha, my name is Jim Shawn, and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha.
Welcome back. This is Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker, and I am here today talking with Leroy Jenkins of Production Partners. Leroy, we kind of took a little break there in between,
Yes.
but you have us on the edge. You had just met somebody very special that changed your life forever.
Well, that's a nice way to put it, Reg, but that's very accurate. And we were trying to figure out what to do so that we could be together and raise a family. And she got a phone call, and I'll make this story short too, from an editor in Japan that knew she was in Hawaii. And all he asked was, is there somebody that she might know that could help with the magazine layout? So she asked me. I'm from Hawaii. I went, me? What do I do?
Very entrepreneurial.
Okay, this is a new challenge. Tell them to come on in. Right? But we did it together. And I think that was the key for us, is to be together at that young age. And apparently he was very happy. And there's one thing I learned about Japan, and I've been there many, many, many times, is that once you establish a relationship, it usually lasts forever. And so I got to know this editor, and he apparently was pleased. And so, like in Japan, one other thing, introduction. Very important. Anyway, he introduced us to somebody else, and so I just told the wife, we need to make this a business. I'd only been there once to meet her family. Why don't we try this for maybe a year or two, because we'd had a little savings. If it doesn't work, we'll change.
So a year or two, and how long have you been doing this now?
35.
Uh-huh.
And so we started as a mom and pop, and that's really, for me, the foundation of Hawaii is those mom and pop businesses, those new creative ideas that people have passion for. They make commitments to make something happen and give it its all. And so that's where we were at. And so we were there together, working together and raising kids until 1997. And we were having so much work internationally. That's really my market internationally that was coming in. And we had the kids at home that I actually told her, I'd like, she needs to be home with the kids more. So I took on a partner in 1997, and we changed the name of the company to Production Partners. And I've had that partnership going ever since. And you go through your good times. It's kind of like a marriage, partnerships,
Sure,
if you agree. And you go through your highs and low valleys, and we have survived all of them, including things that affect the film industry in Hawaii, which could be tsunamis, wars, exchange rates. Anything can affect it that's beyond your control.
I remember there was one time where Japan got a little nervous about what was going on in the U.S. and pretty much froze the travel.
Well, I think that's part of that cultural over there, because I was taught this, so I've learned a lot about that particular culture. And I've done a lot of work for them over there and have tremendous friends and relationships. But it's hard for them, even though we want them to come to Hawaii when we're in peril of some sort, they, out of respect, if you look at it from their point of view, don't want to be here having a good time when we're not. And that's a cultural thing. And so, yes, during 9/11, some of these other things, they basically, I'm not sure if the government did it, but they just kind of stayed home. That has an effect on business if you're in the international market of maybe any kind, including film. And so you learn to deal with those things. But what's happened since my partner and I got together, she's now the casting director. I figured she knew more about talent than anybody. So she just does that. She's not sitting right next to me grinding it out on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Leroy, let me ask a question. Production. I'm not sure that everybody in the audience understands how complicated production can be. Can you just take a few minutes and explain what a typical type job is for you?
Well, when you work with international projects and film people from different countries, you're faced with language barriers. You're faced with cultural differences, even though it's the industries. But film in general, there's a lot of moving parts. And I've always looked at it as a short-term corporation that needs to get in, and you got a deadline and get out.
Very project focused.
Entirely project focused, and nothing really else matters, right? You got a lot of people doing a lot of things, and everybody has to do their craft at the right moment, or everything comes to a halt. And so some of the projects I've been on have been quite large, okay? You know, you could have a 75-man film crew, from technicians to talent to background, I mean, production assistants, production staff, coordinators. And basically my job, running the company, is to make sure everybody does what they're supposed to. Because in the end, it's gonna fall right in front of me anyway, good or bad. And sometimes you're only good as your last project. So you keep that in the forefront, like, that keeps you going. Like, this will bring me to the next project. It's part of your reputation. There's a lot going on, Reg.
Well, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of synchronization that has to be done. And of
yes.
course, you've only got one project going on at a time, right?
No. I mean, in most cases, yes. But I've had up to 4 campaigns, national campaigns going at one time. So you have 4 crews in different locales. And my job was just to keep running around them. But when you have several languages going, that adds a different element. Now, when I work on American projects, and I've worked on American features, or American commercials, it's easy, it's one language. But I did a Chinese feature last year. Some of them spoke Japanese, some are speaking Cantonese, some are speaking Mandarin, some of the people from Hong Kong were English. Then I have the technicians and people and talent in Hawaii that are on this project. And sometimes you stand there and you're watching the different translations, and when it gets back to you, my really big question is everybody on the same page? Before we do something, right? Before we roll a camera. So it adds a different element, but for me, that's what makes it interesting.
Never a boring day.
Never a boring day. I like working with the different cultures. I love working still on American sets, but really my training came from Japan. And so I've learned how they think. And they're a service-oriented country, as you know. And so I think that's part of being an entrepreneur and keeping your company going, is keeping your relationships going.
Of course.
And that's really the important things, because those relationships really are your PR. They're out there. Usually a film crew can be made up of a lot of freelance people, except for maybe a core production staff. Once they leave and they go on to 5-0 or wherever they're going, whether it's a local technician or these guys going back to Korea after we finished the K1 drama, they're my word of mouth. And I depend on them a great deal. So yeah, that's how Production Partners is where it is right now. And so I'm very proud of it.
Very good. Well, you've accomplished a lot, and from what I understand, that industry has changed quite a bit over the years. It wasn't always as big and popular as it is now. It took some effort to get there.
No, and that effort brings us up to an organization that I'm also very proud of. When I first got into it in the early 80s, the international business really was there and not there. There was very little going on, and it wasn't really recognized by, maybe, if I can be so bold, the film office and stuff, because nobody really knew what was going on. And so in 1986, myself and a few other good people that I got to know decided that we needed a voice, and we need to be recognized as part of the industry, along with the movies coming in and 5-0, whatever was going on back then. And so we started the first international trade association that is going still very strong till this day. But what we didn't have any money again, right? We all just threw in our pennies and barely bought coffee, and we didn't even have an office. We used to meet everywhere. But what we decided to do is that we needed to develop this industry. And you can't wait for the phone to ring. You just can't do that. And so we decided to do seminars overseas. Well, that takes a lot of planning, but see, that's another challenge. So for the people that are true entrepreneurs, challenges, you're not afraid of them. And so we had to get a lot of support. We talked to the state film office, branch manager at that time, a wonderful lady that tremendous respect for, another person, Georgette Deemer. And we talked to all the county commissioners. We talked to our local vendors and talent agents, and we found out a lot of people were really depending on work internationally. So, okay. The core group got together, the production service companies, and we put the Hawaii International Film Association together. And we got some support from the Department of Economic Development, and we went over to Japan, made contact with their Producers Association, and put on a huge seminar.
And you've had a leadership role in this organization ever since it was founded, have you not?
I was its first president.
Yeah.
And currently, I'm probably the senior consultant, maybe. But they left me with government, labor, and the visa liaison person. So,
and that's a big issue.
Yeah, and so when I work with labor, all of us work with our local unions that have the technicians, Screen Actors Guild because of the talent, our drivers, and so we all have wonderful relationships, by the way. It has come far from the early 90s. And so we now all work better together, and we're trying to take the film industry to a different level. But we took an industry, just the international side, under our trade association, and I think in '86 there was only about maybe 20 jobs that somehow came into Hawaii to do their projects. 150 last year.
Wow.
And
It's a
so
big
that
increase.
is success.
It is.
But we have to keep Hawaii in the forefront. So we've done a few of those, right? And there are new markets now. China is a new emerging market, really a big deal. If I'm correct, 600 movies last year.
Wow.
Now, it's not like the Hollywood blockbusters, but 600 movies. And they're starting to show interest in
That's
Hawaii.
countrywide. That's not in Hawaii.
No. There's 600 feature films that were shot probably in China. But now China is like Japan or even Korea, trying to step out and broaden their horizons. And Hawaii it's on their forefront.
Right.
So we need to, if we're interested, those who are need to go there. Because what we do is educate. We explain how to do business in Hawaii, how we do film in Hawaii, what our, what's the permit system, et cetera.
And that's what some of those workshops and seminars were that you went over there and
We did
conducted.
budget workshops. We would do workshops on customs, constantly with simultaneous translators.
Well, this is fascinating, and we've reached a point where we need to take another brief break.
Another break.
Another break. So
Okay.
we will be back. This is Reg Baker, Business in Hawaii. I'm here talking with Leroy Jenkins from Production Partners. We'll be right back. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you center stage.
Aloha, this is Alice V. Hagan from ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show is a bi-weekly show on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. We invite interesting people, entrepreneurs, fascinating leaders who contribute to the social economic well-being of our state. Please tune in to my show, Business Education Spotlight, ThinkTech Hawaii, bi-weekly, Thursday, 3 to 4 p.m. Aloha.
Welcome back. This is Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker, and I'm here chatting with Leroy Jenkins from Production Partners. Leroy, I know you've had a lot of interface and you've worked with a lot of talent over the years. And I've been working on an impersonation that I want to test and see if you can guess who this is.
Okay.
Now, there we go. All right, now, everybody, watch the eyes. This is going to become important now. This is my impersonation. Now, who is that?
Give me a minute. Takes me back, by the way, but I think that was a young Tom Selleck.
Hey. All right. Well, in case Tom's watching, I know he watched the show, but my apologies, but that's the best I could do.
Okay.
But share with me some of the talent that you have worked with over the years.
Oh, gosh. There's been so many, Reg. I did a Tim Burton thing. They came to Hawaii with Christoph Waltz and Amy Adams, and Tim was the director. And it was a period piece called Big Eyes. A little over a year ago, it was released, I think, last Christmas. It was only part of it was shot here, but we handled the Hawaii part. And it was a period piece on Margaret Keane, who was an artist that did all the paintings with the big eyes on the kids and things.
It was on pay-per-view just
Was
recently.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, it was exciting. Now that's an American feature of its size, and they get quite large. Before that, Rise of the Apes did some shooting here. Other than that, gosh, from Australia, Germany, Korean, Chinese. I'm trying to get used to the Korean and Chinese talent names. They tell me who they are, but you know.
Unless you're there, you don't really.
But with Japan, everybody from Takakura Ken, if you're familiar with him, he did a movie called Black Rain with Michael Douglas, the Japanese policeman. All their music groups, the group that shot out here, did a concert out here, Kapolei Arashi. Well, they first came to Hawaii 10 years ago, and our company did their first little show. Had no idea how big they were going to get. Well, guess who got them? Tom Moffat.
Yes.
Put on the show out there, right?
That's right.
But just about all of their music, their sports people, from Ichiro to Kitajima, the swimmer, it goes on and on, because when we do campaigns, their notables come in, and so we have to take care of them as well, and we get to know them.
A little special handling, I guess.
Oh, definitely. But you know, they are very down-to-earth people, and I'd like to say one thing: all of these people love Hawaii. We're bringing the money into Hawaii, so it's an import, and we can talk about export, and it's being spent into our local economy and creating a lot of jobs.
Well, and that's very important.
That's a big deal.
We need to diversify the economy here. We need to have those additional revenue sources.
Yes.
How has the industry changed over the years? I know we've gotten some of the U.S. films over here. It sounds like you've done a lot with Japan, but it looks like now that maybe China, Korea, Australia is beginning to open up and show more interest.
Well, I think the love of Hawaii in general, but they're finding out that doing business in Hawaii is a good thing. It's a positive thing, and that they can come here and leave here with good memories, including the people that work on these projects, our local technician. Our resources are our people, right?
Absolutely.
We have wonderful talent here. We need to be pro-film, if I can put it that way. The state is behind it. This industry needs to grow and go to the next level. And that could be export. We've got the UH Film School going up there. We need to bring those students out into our industry, right, through internships or depending on what their craft is and what they're graduating with. You can get a film degree here. Our junior colleges have fine art departments, right? So if you're ready to make a commitment to stay home, if I can put it that way, and live here, you can. And I truly, truly believe that. I came from a family of 8. And maybe it was back then, but I watched my brothers and sisters, and I wish they had stayed, but they left because of opportunities. Hawaii has changed. The industry has grown. We've got incentives going on from the state level. That helps a lot in marketing, is those different tax incentives, right?
Of course, yeah.
Of course. But I truly believe that we need to keep, whether it's the film industry, so we can just put it on the table that way, we need to have the opportunities in Hawaii to keep our natural resources here, which are our children, through education, and then into the workforce, whether you go to the medical school here or the film school here. I have children. I want them to raise their children here. I don't want to take a trip to New York to visit them.
Music to my ears. I love hearing the positive theme of what's going on. And there's also peripheral benefits of this. I mean, having an active film industry not only generates that revenue and employment,
Yes.
but also helps promote Hawaii internationally across the world.
Well, I've always thought there was a connection. It's kind of like the old original 5-0, where Jack Lord, he was a top of the Ely guy.
Right.
Well, I'm sure that helped.
That's another impersonation I can do here.
Can you do it now
Yeah,
for
well,
me?
yeah, there.
That's Jack. But that type of promotion, you cannot put a value on it because it's not something you're paying for advertising. So me doing that Chinese feature, I've got a Japanese feature coming in, doing these campaigns, that is a marketing tool that should relate to how we value tourism here. And it does connect and it does promote Hawaii. So we are not only filming, we are promoting Hawaii and what Hawaii is all about.
Absolutely, and we need to continue doing that.
We need to be positive. That's why when you asked me, I started watching your show. And I was pleased that you did ask me because it is positive. And growing up here, well, like everybody else, you read things, you hear things, and I've never thought so. Maybe I'm not in the know, but I've always thought Hawaii was a great place to be an entrepreneur or with a degree and stay here and raise your family in a positive way. We are blessed to be in Hawaii.
You know, there's challenges, and I've done a lot of traveling around the country, and I've got some national positions that I'm involved in. And there's challenges everywhere you go. It's just,
Yes.
how do you deal with it? You know, there are ways of getting around it. And, you know, what you've done is a complicated industry. There's a lot of rules and regulations. There's immigration issues. To say that it was easy is probably silly.
Well, when I look back on it, I wonder how the heck did I get through this? But I think it's just is the way I was brought up and wanting to make something succeed. You got to have the passion for it, and you got to be able to understand there's a responsibility with it as well. So if you're going to have your own business, whether it's Hawaii or anywhere, you have to you take on a really large responsibility, and usually you're the last one that gets paid, by the way.
Hopefully
You've got to take care of everybody and make sure everybody that is on board with your idea or your service or working with your company really is happy. I like that.
All right.
Is that the
was
bell?
good. No, that was our dance music, you know. But
But, yeah, I mean, and so that's it. Even though I've had a number of businesses, and I've been in my I found my niche, let's put it that way. I've always taken a very serious policy about responsibility. And even if I had sold something or decided something wasn't working, I always make sure that all the T's were crossed, all the I's are dotted before I move on.
That's good. Well, that's just paying attention to detail.
That's exactly correct.
And, that responsibility is something that a lot of people really learn quickly once they get into business, is that, you've got to take care of your people, you got to take care of your customers.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've got to subordinate your interests in order to get that done.
You make a lot of sacrifices. Even the family will make those sacrifices because you can't just turn it off at 4 p.m. It's 24/7 when it's yours.
That's right. It's not a 9-to-5 job.
It's
You take
not.
it home with you every night.
Every night. And I still do, by the way. So, and the wife thinks I should slow down, but I've got the energy to speed up, so.
Well, good. Well, you're opening China.
Well, it's a new market, and guess what? I've never been there. And I've done a couple things now for them, and it's now developed this same desire. I have this interest now about them. I need to learn about their history, their culture more. I learned a lot on the job. Believe me, I learned a lot on these projects that I've done for them. But I have the same gusto or passion as I did when we took a chance with Japan.
Right. Now, let me, going back a little bit to Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom.
Now he's I guess he's, what, in his 80s?
Oh, I thought he was younger than me, but.
He'll be happy to hear that.
I'm not going to say Tom, but yeah, you could be close.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So you got plenty of time left.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, yeah, within the next 10, 15 years, you should have everything handled with China.
What a wonderful individual. I mean,
He's a good man.
He's still going. I mean, he hasn't just said, I've had enough and I'm going home. I still listen to his radio shows on the weekend.
Yeah.
It takes me back to those days, and when I see him, I tell him, I go, Tom, God, you're playing my music, so.
Well, and that's the difference between a job and maybe your own business that you've got a passion for. You never get tired of it.
Yes, and I don't, because for me, every job, even though the camera and all that kind of stuff, and you got a script or you got a storyboard, it's kind of all the same, every job is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's very creative, and I look forward to each one.
Very good. So do you have any final words for the audience, something that you have learned that is very important that you would like to share? Just little words of wisdom.
I would just like to pass on to the younger generation, because that's really who needs to take the industry forward, that there's a lot that can be done, including exporting our creative juices or talent, that we need the young people to follow us. And if there's anything that I could ever do advice-wise, I can be reached. People were good to me in the early days when I was young. I've never forgotten them. And so for me, it's really my turn to give back.
Right. Well, what goes around comes around.
Yes.
And it's great to share that knowledge.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we have run out of time. But Leroy, I appreciate very much you taking the time to come on to the show. And this is Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. We air every Thursday at 2 o'clock. You can catch us live on livestream.com. Appreciate you being here. See you next week. Aloha.